Hey, this is Vicki Peterson from the Bangles, and you are listening to Icon Fetch.
Welcome to Icon Fetch, the web's premier music interview show. Now, here's your host, Tony Peters.
Welcome to Icon Fetch. I am Tony Peters. Well, you could say it's been one hell of a ride for Dwight Twilley. Emerging from Tulsa, Oklahoma in the mid-70s, he scored a big hit right out of the gates with I'm on Fire. Establishing right away Twilley's keen way with a melody, something he's been doing for over 40 years now. Well, after souring on the bright lights of the big city, he returned home to Tulsa near the close of the last millennium and began making records on his own terms. The best of Twilley, the Tulsa Years, sums up one of the most fruitful chapters of his career.
It could be love. It could be love.
The two-disc set also contains several bonus tracks as well. And we welcome back to the show Dwight Twilley. Good to talk to you again, Dwight. How are you?
I'm good, Tony. It's great to be back with you.
Yeah, it's good to talk to you again. Now, this is kind of a neat collection here because, you know, summing up, arguably, you could say this is the most prolific chapter of your career. I mean, you're looking at this, you're holding it in your hand, 2 discs crammed full of songs. It's pretty impressive.
40 songs, yeah. It also has a 20-page color booklet in it, just to add a little bonus.
Right.
Yeah, it is. It's we're proud of it as a pretty serious collection of material, and we have been working very hard and sort of releasing album after album these last few years. So it's a good thing, and I think people are going to be very pleased with it. And one of the reasons we did it was in a way to kind of say thanks to all our fans that have been along the ride with us.
Right. Now, you know, I was reading in the liner notes, and you talk about, you know, you were making records in Los Angeles because pretty much there's a lot of great records that come out of Los Angeles, and but you had a couple of things sort of happen to you that kind of got you the hell out of there. What was going on?
Oh, one thing after another. You know, you mentioned I'm on Fire. It was very, very shortly after the release of I'm on Fire, and it became a big hit. The record company fell apart, and so the follow-up singles went nowhere, and then a bunch of contractual disputes. Some secretary at one of the record companies went on vacation and forgot to pick up the option for the Dwight Twilley band.
That's you can't make this stuff up, man. I'm telling you.
No, it's unbelievable. And later on, another good one was after the Jungle album, you know, the hit song Girls and all that, getting ready to follow up the Jungle album with that album I'd recorded called Wild Dogs. We had high hopes for that. And about 5 or 6 days before the record was getting ready to be released, the head of the record company was on the NBC News being filmed by the FBI having a meeting with the Gambino brothers.
Oh, yikes.
Which started this huge payola scandal.
Wow.
And, everybody on the label disappeared except me because my record was already too far into the pipeline. But, so, the early 90s, it was kind of really becoming apparent that the big label thing and rock and roll really and the music business was really in a nosedive. And so really it was kind of when the Northridge earthquake came along and shook up our house so badly that by law we had to leave it, that I decided to return to Tulsa because it just didn't seem like it was worth, being there anymore. You didn't really have to be in L.A. or in New York anymore. And at that point I was fortunate enough to have the success with the song Why You Want to Break My Heart.
Why you want to break my heart? Why you want to break my heart?
In the motion picture soundtrack. And
of Wayne's World, right? Yeah, that was from...
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And so we were able to move back here and build our own studio onto our Big Oak Ranch. And we just started sort of nonstop recording with no rules and no one to tell us what to do. And it's been a really interesting and magical period. And this kind of is a summary of that time.
Always, yeah, it could be always.
And we think it's time for us to step back, because we have been just recording record after record.
Right.
And so we're going to step back from that and get involved in some other projects. And we've been playing a lot around the country.
Nice, nice. You know, what's interesting in the liner notes, one of the things you said is, you know, in the early days when you and Phil Seymour were putting the Dwight Twilley Band together, you were lucky enough to have like a practice space right above Phil's dad's electric business, whatever. And
Bill
yet,
Pitcock's dad.
Oh, Bill Pitcock's dad. Okay, right.
Yeah.
So you're above the, above this, you've got your practice space, you got a tape recorder, and you kind of just had free reign to that, where most people didn't have that. And what's interesting is you kind of draw the parallel. Here you are years later with that same kind of issue where you actually have kind of free reign in the studio again. You got your own studio. So
yeah. So I was kind of divided up within like 3 time periods, with the pre-fame days of, we used to call that building the shop.
Right, okay.
Pitcock Electric. And we recorded up there like crazy people. And believe it or not, and that's, how many years back, somewhere around 40 years ago. That's actually coming out. Somebody's actually releasing some of those songs on double vinyl.
Really?
In the springtime. Yeah.
Wow, nice. So
after all this time, it's amazing to me.
It's been a long time. Have you heard those tracks? Or you just? Are they? Is it decent quality kind of thing? You get your approval, or does that?
Well, it is what it is.
Right.
It's lo-fi.
Right.
But it was great work. It was great songs, and a lot of the songs were recorded, on our records later. Songs like "You Were So Warm," if people remember that one.
Sure. Right. Yeah.
Things like that.
Nice. Well, so you're, you like you say, it's time to look back on this. Was there anything that kind of really spurred this 2-disc set? Was there something that really kind of happened, like, okay, we'll do this kind of thing?
Well, a lot of it was by just some magic and circumstances. All the deals that we made through all those years, kind of at one point it just ended up that we now own all our own masters. Nice. Which is rare.
Sure. Yeah.
And we thought, now that we own all these, it'd be kind of nice. We've done all this work. Why don't we make a collection? And so we wanted to use as many tracks as we could, but at the same time, they're at super high quality. It's not one of those things where people put too many songs on their disc and the last tracks skip and all that.
Right. Yeah. No,
start losing quality. We were under very strict rules, but we were able to end up with 40 songs.
I'm gonna stay here all damn night till the jukebox dies.
So when you're putting together like, a 17-year span of your career, was it an easy kind of thing to sort of narrow it down and to choose which songs from which albums and that kind of thing?
Well, yeah, well, it was actually really hard because it was a lot of times you'd be going, there'd be ones you'd want, and you'd go, but we can't have too many, and and you didn't want to take too many from one record. We did admit that we chose more from the newer albums that we did than the older, and mainly, quite honestly, just because we got better, and we think we did some of our very best work in the later years. So we drew from the newer records more than the old, but we made reference to each time period as best we could.
Right. Well, what's interesting is as you're going along, you said you've got the Big Oak Studios and all that, and your wife Jan kind of she became your engineer and then eventually co-producer kind of thing. But that was not the arrangement as it like originally started out that way, right?
No, nor was she an engineer. It's just there wasn't one here.
Right.
So she just became one, and eventually she just deserved that title. After years of work and working with me and working with Bill Pickhock IV, that she earned that title.
Now, I imagine, if your wife is your engineer and co-producer, can she be like brutally honest? Hey, Dwight, that wasn't any good. Do it again. I don't know.
Oh, she's that way anyway.
Right. Sure.
Which is really kind of helpful to
sure,
me,
sure.
because if I walked in with a song and she said, "God, that sucks,"
Right.
It kind of keeps
right.
my standards high.
Right. Sure.
It's not going to be any fun working for a couple months on a song that I know my wife hates.
Right. Exactly.
So.
What's interesting, in 40 songs, and I mean, this is not just a compilation of stuff that you've already put out. You've got several bonus tracks of things that, have not seen the light of day before. Disc 1, track 1 opens with Could Be Love.
It could be love. It could be love. You're the only one I'm thinking of.
Now, this is track 2 on the Dwight Twilley Band, Sincerely. That was originally sung by Phil Seymour.
Right.
And it's kind of an interesting story you talk about in the liner notes, how typically the songs that you wrote for Phil you've stayed away from, but this one's different.
Yeah, I mean, I specifically wrote songs for Phil. He had a higher and different voice than me. And so generally, when I go out and play, sometimes people go, ask me to sing things like, sing Twilley Don't Mind, or more like, or something like You Were So Warm. And I'd always be, no, that's a Phil song. Didn't really work for me. But in the case of this song, I actually wrote it for myself, and it was towards the end of recording Sincerely. And Phil came in, and he'd been a, kind of party boy a little bit, and he came in and was listening to my vocal, and I think it kind of just dawned on him that he hadn't really been at work, and he'd only had a couple of lead vocals on the whole album. So of course he came to me and just begged me, can you let me sing it? Can you let me sing it? So we turned my vocals down and let him do the lead vocal on it. But originally it was written for me to sing. And we were just kicking around, Bill and I, one night in the studio and started playing it, and it just seemed really fresh. So we went ahead and cut it, and it's one of our favorite cuts on the record.
Right, absolutely. And I mean, it's a great way to start things off, for sure. As you're tracking through the disc, you kind of cover a lot of territory. Like, for instance, Beauty Dirt. Has a lot of... What exactly is going on that track?
It's a lot of people having a lot of fun.
Right, okay.
Because probably with a major label, you wouldn't do that.
Right.
There'd be somebody complaining, "Oh, that's not commercial." You wouldn't. Nobody's won't get played on the radio, and don't waste our time. And it was something that just like everybody wanted to be a part of Beauty Dirt.
Nice. The other part of it, you talked about, there's also a couple of tracks that were done at like a school for recording engineers.
Yeah. Those were the days of just, anytime you could get recording time, you'd take it. And somebody came up with this thing of you could go to an engineer school, I guess it might be. And each time you did like a different track, it was a different engineer.
Oh man! Talk about not getting any momentum going, right? It's like,
but you ended up with the tape,
right?
Okay,
the
master, and it was kind of a fair trade-off.
Right.
And pretty decent little song. The song was called Reach for the Sky.
We won't try to reach for the sky.
Well, that's, you're helping people, future engineers of America, helping.
Yeah, it's one of the only tracks that I have that has like 45 engineers.
Oh, my
on
gosh.
it.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Now, another bonus track, Let Her Dance. It's a great Bobby Fuller track.
Well, there she goes with her brand new love affair, dancing with him like she don't even care. Let her dance all night long.
Where does that one originate?
Well, one coincidence is that Phil Seymour also recorded that song. And I always liked the tune, and we had a fundraiser, crowd fundraiser at one point, and one of the rewards was someone could pick, one of the fans could pick a song that they'd like me to record.
Oh, okay.
And so it was a Swedish girl that's been a fan for a long time, and she asked for me to record Let Her Dance, and I just thought that's kind of a cool idea. And I haven't done many covers, and kind of an interesting thing to have a cover song on a Dwight Twilley record in the first place. And it represents something. I don't know what it represents, but it represents something.
Right.
And I thought it was also one of the most powerful and last great rock and roll lead breaks from Bill Pickett IV. Amazing impact on that record.
Right, yeah.
And we had a lot of fun recording it. And we're also proud of the fact that the Bobby Fuller estate, is being paid by Big Oak Records to use his song.
There you go. Yeah. And that's Bobby Fuller's actually got a rich catalog of good stuff too. He's known as a one-hit wonder, but if you kind of dig into his albums, man, I tell you what, there's some good stuff there too. So,
oh, sure.
So, I want to ask you about a couple of more bonus tracks here. Pop Bottle. That kind of talks about the early days of you and Phil kind of finding pop bottles. I mean, they don't do that much anymore, right?
No. They just recycle them now.
Right.
Those days are gone. But that was during the period when we were working at the shop. Because, we didn't play as often as other bands. We were always recording. Hardly any bands had their own recording studio. And they'd mostly be playing bar gigs. And so instead of playing bar gigs, we were always recording. So generally, we were usually pretty damn broke. So if you go out to a park, on an afternoon and pick up, 10 or 12 pop bottles each, that was good for a bean burrito and a Dr. Pepper, and you were set.
Nice. Yeah, like you say, man, it's all plastic. Right. Now it's all plastic. Can't do any of that anymore. So, the other track on here that definitely has a different feel to it, Larry's Larry. That has an interesting story, right?
Hi-ya, Larry's Larry. Hi-ya, Larry's Larry. Hi-ya, Larry's Larry. Hi-ya.
Yeah, it was actually the first thing that we recorded here, and we just kind of used it as an experiment, just to learn how to use our studio. And it was about the person that built our studio and his family. And it was, nearing novelty, I would say. And another track that just everybody wanted to do something on.
Right.
It's you can just, sometimes in the record, you can just hear when people are having fun. And it has humor.
Right.
Which is also something that's a forgotten element of rock and roll.
It is.
Because it used to be a real conscious part of rock and roll in the early days. And so much of music today is so dark and serious.
Yeah. We need some.
I think there's a need for Larry sometimes.
Right. Yeah, we need a little ray of sunshine going in there, get you laughing, kind of thing. And then I got one more for you. At the very end of the collection here, you've got a brand new song. What can you tell me about Very Young?
All the things I should have done when I was very young. I could have stayed, but then I'd run. But I was very young.
Well, we kind of did it to represent the way that I'm performing now. I'm doing what we call the Look Maud No Band acoustic tour.
I love it. That's good. That's good.
Where I go out and I sit down with my acoustic and play songs that you would just never hear me play with the band. I've never done it before, never thought I ever would do it. And by just circumstances, I got talked into just playing a couple of songs in Canada. And it actually went over very well, and I was surprised to find that I actually kind of enjoyed it.
Nice.
And now we've been kind of playing all over the country with quite a happy response. You know?
Well, that's great. That's great. All right, I got one more for you. You know, a couple of weeks ago, we lost the great Leon Russell, and you, along with the Dwight Twilley Band, were signed to his record label, Shelter Records. So what can you tell me about Leon?
He just popped up. We didn't expect to end up on Shelter Records. We actually avoided it, and everybody appreciated him. But he wasn't really, we didn't think he really represented our style of music. And so while everyone else that lived in Tulsa, like we did, was very, very eager to meet and get in with Leon and be signed at Shelter. But it turned out that we went to Los Angeles seeking our record deal, and then just by odd circumstances ended up being signed by Shelter Records in Hollywood.
That's crazy.
And we came back here to Tulsa, and we went into Leon's church studio, and the very first record we cut was I'm on Fire.
Nice, yeah.
And later on, one night, Leon Russell just showed up, and, from the outside, he looks kind of spacey and sinister.
Right, yeah, the beard.
He was just such a kind and generous man. And even invited us to come and work with him at his studio, at his house. And, I learned a lot from him. And just what a huge talent. What a great loss.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, the new anthology is called The Best of Twilley, The Tulsa Years, from Dwight Twilley. And as always, man, it's a pleasure talking to you. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Tony.
You've been listening to Icon Fetch with Tony Peters. Want more great interviews? Head over to iconfetch.com. There, you'll find every interview we've ever done, plus CD reviews, This Day in Music, and a random album of the day. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter. Who is Tony going to interview next? It could be you. Send what you've got to Tony Peters. Icon Fetch, P.O. Box 292134, Dayton, Ohio 45429. Or email Tony at host@iconfetch.com. Until next time, this is Joe Kelly. Have a great day.